But, good afternoon. Is everyone here? Can everyone hear me? I'm just trying to.
Yes, we can hear you, Inspector. Not everybody's rejoined yet, but we
right.
We can definitely hear you.
Okay. I think I've got most people that at the moment. What I'll do is I'll resume the inquiry now, and anything that anyone wants to raise over lunch that's occurred, any concerns or anything. So in that case, what I'll do is there's a number of other people who wish to be heard out of the third parties. So I'd noticed that Mr. Knepp is here. So I don't know whether, and Margaret Crawford's here as well. So there's a few people who need to be heard, and I'll just make sure I've got the right people. So it's really Mr. Knepp and Margaret Crawford and Albert Poole. But Margaret Crawford's speaking on she's speaking on behalf of someone else. So what I thought I'd do is Mr. Knepp was the first person that I mentioned. So what I'll do is I'll deal with Mr. Knepp, then I'll deal with Mrs. Crawford, and then that's all right, Mr. Poole last, out of the ones who've mentioned that they'd like to speak. So Mr. Knepp, if you'd like to say something first, and have you got anything in writing that you're reading from?
I do have. Yes, I do.
So is it possible to send that through sometime?
Yes.
Right, thank you. And who are you representing, yourself, or are you representing someone else, or an organisation?
The Tenterden and District Residents Association, TDRA.
Ah, yes, that's it. Yeah. Right, and so you'll follow this up with something in writing then?
Correct.
Right, thank you. And so are you reading straight from a statement, or are you going to just
I'm going to read straight from the statement.
Right, okay, then if you'd like to continue, you might be asked some questions from myself, just for clarification mainly, and maybe from the appellant's advocate, Mr. White. So I don't know whether you're aware of that, but
I wasn't, but
anyway, I mean, I think Mr. White's not so much into asking third parties questions, but he might, if there's something that you raise that he'd like to just question, and I might want to question you just on something to clarify something myself. But anyway, I'll let you get on and read your statement then, Mr. Knapp. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. On behalf of the residents and the TDRA, we would like to raise the following key objections for this application. The applicant seeks to have the site approved as a windfall site over and above the sites approved in the Ashford Borough Local Plan 2030. As far as we can see, windfall is defined as sites which become available unexpectedly and are not considered as part of the Borough Local Plan. As this site has been specifically considered and deemed unnecessary to meet the 2030 requirements of the borough, as well as numerous previous application dismissals, we cannot see how it can be classified or justified as a windfall. It appears there are a significant number of fundamental inconsistencies within the evidence provided by the appellant and their partners, which would be misleading to decision makers and residents alike. Within the borough plan, there are key relevant specific criteria under Housing Policy HOU 5 as follows. 1, the need to be proportional to the size of the settlement. The local plan was compiled in full recognition of the ambitions of Ashford Town to expand significantly over the period, with plenty of available land in various directions from the town center. The growth objectives for Tenterden recognize limitations on extending the footprint of the town and the limited capacity to cope with housing and population above that growth level. For the applicant to represent this changed percentage as proportional is unacceptable and should be rejected. Number 2, conservation and enhancement of the natural environment and preservation or enhancement of any heritage assets in the locality. We question the applicant's assertion that no heritage assets will be directly affected by development within the application site. The historic landscape character of the site is acknowledged as one exhibiting considerable time, depth, and coherence, with no historic boundary loss and the survival of medieval landscape features, including hedgerows, veteran trees, ponds, and trackways. It is felt that this ancient mosaic, in combination with unimproved or semi-improved neutral and acid grassland, renders the site historically important locally, regionally, and nationally. Point 3, ecology. The EPR states that semi-improved neutral grassland, brush-dominated semi-improved neutral grassland, and semi-improved acid grassland as of local importance. However, there is evidence to suggest that unimproved neutral grassland of county and even national importance also exists. In terms of methodology, additional equipment is required for identifying myotosis bat species, which do not appear to have been deployed. The invertebrate scoping study was conducted for a single day for a 50-acre site. This is unacceptable and further surveys should have been carried out. A detailed arboriculture report is required for the entire site, demonstrating root protection allowances, particularly for identified veteran trees and habitat opportunities. It has been confirmed that the population of the great crested newts is so significant, it could potentially be of county importance. A large number of species have been recorded and shared with KMBRC, including a minimum of 15 red list birds of primary conservation concern. There is no mention of these species within the documents. Therefore, the data appears to be out of date, and there could be the possibility that this data has been overlooked. Clearly, the application should be considered against both accurate and up-to-date data. Neither appear to be fully provided for. Time should be allowed for careful and detailed evaluation, including obtaining of professional independent reports where necessary. Point 4, heritage. The historic landscape character of the site is acknowledged as one of the exhibiting considerable time, depth, and coherence. The historic reports fail to identify the catastrophic impact on ancient and veteran trees, some of which have not been protected with adequate root protection areas. The planning documents refer to the Tenterden Conservation Area Appraisal, which was carried out in 1995 and clearly prioritized grassland in the AONB. It did not properly assess the historic landscape of Limes Land. Unfortunately, the CAA failed to record Gallows Green, or indeed the ridge and furrow, which is clearly visible. It is therefore misleading to quote from a 26-year-old document. ABC has confirmed that a review of the conservation area is now overdue, and that the heritage features on Limes Land will be taken into consideration during a review. It is unfortunate that the reports and developer appear to consider that only built heritage assets are important. A large expanse of subsurface heritage will be decimated if development is permitted. It is important to note that historic England affords equal protection to both built and landscape archaeological assets. Paragraph 189 of the NPPF confirms that the heritage assets range from sites and buildings of local historic value to those of the highest significance. These assets are an irreplaceable resource and should be considered in a manner appropriate to their significance, so that they can be enjoyed for their contribution to the quality of life of existing and future generations. The heritage assets on Limes Land, whether surface or subsurface, cannot be replaced and are representative of the human impact on the local area. Residents believe that these heritage assets are important and should be conserved. Point 5, transport and access. We question the car use assumptions made, believing that car usage will be significantly higher than forecast, causing higher levels of air pollution and traffic congestion on surrounding roads. The traffic survey was apparently carried out during a school holiday period, and we feel does not represent a realistic set of recordings taken into account the higher volumes of traffic generated by the school run and other associated vehicles such as school buses. We are concerned about the potential to adjacent road junctions by the proposed vehicular access points to the site. We are concerned about the impact of traffic flows, likely buildup of congestion, and visual impact caused by the choker traffic calming solution and main access points proposed. Appledore Road is a historically important tree-lined avenue leading to town. It is proposed to remove several established trees that form part of the distinctive landscape and historical features along Appledore Road. In addition, further visual harm would occur with the introduction of unsightly bollards and signage required by the choker measure, which would degrade the setting significantly. We are concerned about the formalization of a pedestrian access point at Woodchurch Road at junction of public footpath A812. This access point is currently dangerous and is located on a blind bend at the top of Woodchurch Road Hill. Point 6, hydrology. We are concerned about the extensive disruption and alteration to the complex natural water system on the site. This will negatively impact wildlife habitat, including many protected species, and is likely to overload the currently inadequate sewer system, particularly along Woodchurch Road, which currently suffers regular localized flooding and pollution. We are concerned about surface water drainage from the proposed development, polluting the fragile natural water system, predominantly draining to the Tilder Guild behind Shrub Coat. Point 7, proposed Section 106 draft agreement. Is this applicant offering to build the sports pavilion and associated pitches, or only to provide the land accompanying this proposal? The cost for these facilities will be considerable, so there is no guarantee that local authorities or other bodies will be able to afford to build them. It is not clear if the developer is offering to provide the proposed planting for the country park and public open space. The maintenance costs of the sports facilities are detailed in the QRD report and highlight the huge scale of commitment required. Detailed maintenance agreements for perpetuity are required for the pavilion, car park, pitches, country park, SUDs, and other leisure facilities that have been stated in the application. It is unlikely that a levy on the proposed dwelling units would be affordable. And so again, this burden is likely to move to Tenterden Town Council or Ashford Borough Council, whose budgets are already incredibly stretched and in our view would be unaffordable. On behalf of our residents, we would ask you to take the above objections into account and reject this appeal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Knapp. That's a good summary of the case then for the Residents Association. And like I say, as it's in writing, you can send that through, can't you? So that'll be fine. Mr. White, have you got any questions of Mr. Knapp?
No, thank you, sir. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Yeah, I haven't got any questions myself. But certainly, I think a lot of those matters that you've raised as on behalf of the association will be matters that will be dealt with anyway in more detail. So I think you've summarised quite a lot of the points that are actually being raised already. But and then there's others that are regarding the hydrology and drainage, and some of the transport issues of accessibility and heritage issues. They'll be raised because there's witnesses from the appellant that will be called to try and put something onto those, and they're able to be asked some questions from some of the objectors if they wish. So there might be questions you might wish to ask of those witnesses when they come up. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So what I'd like to do next is there's a statement from Ros Debling, who hasn't been able to attend, but I think Margaret Crawford is going to be here to read out the statement. We've received the statement, so it's a matter of reading that out. Is that right?
Okay.
Ms. Crawford?
Okay, would you like me to read it now?
Just a minute. What I'll do is I'll get my copy up so I can actually have a look at it while you're reading. That's helpful, but just should be good here. Yeah, so I've now got the statement up. So that's So I can follow it when you're reading, but yes, if you can proceed, thank you. Thanks.
Okay, I'm reading this statement on behalf of the coordinator for Tenterden Kent Community Speedwatch operated by Kent Police. The group have been monitoring speeds and volume of traffic on 3 major approach roads for Tenterden for the last 4 years. Traffic volume and speed has increased over that time and is a major concern for Tenterden residents. Having read the verbose submission of iTransport, it is interesting to note that omissions in sentence construction could give a false impression. Here are 3 examples. 7.3.12. There are frequent local buses, including an hourly service towards the centre of Tenterden, as well as the main centres of employment, retail and leisure in Ashford. This statement implies there are hourly services to Ashford, not so. Also included are the results of the 2011 census, reporting where Tenterden residents use public transport to commute. Apparently, this demonstrates that the existing bus services offer an attractive modal transport for existing population. 2.4.4 Table NSM1. Their own table shows routes 2 and 2A to Ashford as being 2 hourly, when the only bus running in Tenterden on Sunday is 2A. Contradicts the previous points. iTransport have also bolstered the number of bus services in Tenterden by including HSB Homewood and ASB Ashford, totaling 6 routes, which are school buses carrying pupils to and from outlying villages to their secondary schools. They are not public services and they do not run during the school holidays. 2.4.8, located circa 9 kilometres to the east of the site, and therefore at the upper limits of an acceptable cycle distance, 30 minutes, Appledore Station. The distance is nearer to 13 kilometres, with a mile-long hill climb to return to Tenterden. The 4 covered cycle spaces with CCTV do not encourage anyone to commute between Tenterden and this country station. In Sam Reed's submission, the 2 new bus stops to be sited on the Woodchurch Road with non-regulated crossings are near to a junction and a blind corner. There is no provision for assistance for disabled, young or elderly to cross this busy road. These are just a few of the misleading and inaccurate details put before the panel by iTransport. There are more. iTransport, in their submission, state it meets the 3 key transport tests of the National Planning Policy. Will there be appropriate opportunities to take up sustainable modes of transport? Will safe and acceptable access be provided for all users? Will the traffic input be acceptable? In my opinion, the answers to all 3 of these tests is a resounding no. In summary, the iTransport report is a sustainability illusion and the statement should not be taken at face value. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crawford. Well, there's no point in asking questions because the person who's written it's not here. But thank you for reading that out, and that will be taken into consideration.
Thank you.
So what I'd like to do next then is to move on to Mr. Poole, who's here. I've noticed. Yes, thank you. And you're representing Limes Land Protection Group, is that right?
Well, 2 things really. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Yeah,
I think
okay.
everyone else should be able to.
I'm actually making 2 representations. The first of those will be on a personal level because of where we live with respect to the site. And
Yeah.
the second statement will be on behalf of Limes Land Protection Group, of which I am a member. So, I mean, they're distinctly different statements, really. So if I can do mine first, and I've got a couple of other points that I would like to just mention afterwards, which I don't think have been dealt with. And you may be able to give me some, idea of how you're thinking with regard to those extra.
Well, I don't know yet, but
No, I'll leave
have
it.
you, first of all, have you got anything in writing that you're using as a statement?
Yeah, my statement is on core document 743. There are a number of documents under my name.
Core document 740.
43.
That's your personal statement.
Yep.
Is it?
Yep.
And are you doing another?
I'm doing another one for the Limes Land Protection Group, which is 42. I think you'll find
42. Right. So you're going to. Okay, right. So you're basically reading out those then.
Well, the first is mine, so I'm, you know, obviously I'll read mine in detail, and the second one is for Limes Land Protection Group. So
Yeah, that's fine.
first.
Right. Okay, thank you. Thanks. If you can proceed then, please. Thank you.
Just so I noticed other speakers have given their background, and I thought it might be useful to add mine as well. My background is in engineering. I worked in the nuclear industry for probably best part of 25 years. And my last position was senior mechanical maintenance engineer at Dungeness B Power Station. A lot of what I did was problem solving. It was always detailed analysis, and hence I've used some of those particular skills in analysing the application that is before you. And so that probably gives you some idea of my background with regard to that. We've also lived at a property called Rose Cottage, which you'll probably be aware of if you've read many of the documents.
Yeah.
Rose Cottage is on the southern boundary, on the western half of the site, and is the closest to the site. When you do your visit, hopefully you will see us. We're a white weatherboarded property, and so that's where we are. My daughter's property is next door, which is called Marn House. So anyway, with that as a background, if I just read my statement. In my previous statements submitted to the inquiry, and just for reference, that is CD 735. I identified a number of issues with the appeal site which have serious impact on our property at Rose Cottage, on our Marn House, which is our neighbouring property belonging to our daughter and her family. Rose Cottage is one of the oldest recorded properties bordering the appeal site on the southern boundary, and it dates back, I've dated it back to 1769, although part of it's modernised now, I have to accept. Marn House was built in 2010, and that is a modern building. Rose Cottage has been extended from the original brick-built construction, and the upper elevations are finished in white weatherboard in a typical Kentish style. One thing I could add is there's a photo library which I've added to all my documents. So if you wish to, at any point you wanted to spin through those, you'll see loads of photographs which back up and support the comments I'm now making. For the many reasons identified in Ashford Borough by Ashford Borough Council, Tenterden Town Council, the TDRA, and in particular those expressed by Limes Land Protection Group, of which I am a founder member, this application should be rejected at the appeal. If on balance a form of permission is given, then it will be subject to numerous conditions as identified by ABC to the inspector. I am seeking an undertaking to increase the buffer zone around Rose Cottage and Marn House for the following reasons. The area to the north of Rose Cottage is part of Gallows Green, the historic site of the town gallows as shown on the most significant maps of Tenterden, more particularly the Tenterden tithe map of 1843. There's an extract of that map in the photo library. This site is recorded in Kent Historic Environment Records with the reference number that you see there, 309. From the outset of this proposal, Waits have sought to airbrush this non-designated heritage asset from the map, as demonstrated in the key facts document of May 2019, which was available at the first public presentation of this site. There's a copy of that appended in those documents. I've submitted strong rebuttals to RPS, who are the consultants on historic landscape assessment. So I've strong rebuttals to those statements regarding Gallows Green. These are also appended. There is the second point is there's a protected oak tree 313 in the garden of Marn House, which has been underestimated in terms of root protection area, and it was the subject of a 20% offset to the north when Marn House was built. Just to add to that, this was agreed by ABC at that time. And there's an arboricultural report and an extract from the planning report also appended to my documents. This tree throws long shadows across Limes land and will shade the nearest proposed properties. See the photo library again. It is illogical to propose new dwellings in the shade of existing trees. The design should reflect the existing environment and not be guided by as yet built dwellings. The current outline application, which is being appealed, proposes a main access road close to the boundaries of Rose Cottage and Marn House. If you look at their landscape master plan, you will see that quite clearly. As a result, a 30-metre section of ancient hedgerow from the boundary fence north of Rose Cottage, or Rose Cottage to the north, will be destroyed. This includes 2 mature field maples, numbers 309 and 310. And there's an extract from the tree protection plan and images of the hedgerow in the photo library. Bats are often seen in this hedgerow. This hedgerow is also a watercourse from which surface water leaves the site via a culvert, which reaches Appledore Road to the south and to Tenterden Gill. Point 4, this new road will become a main route of heavy site traffic during construction and a main arterial road for residents and heavy goods vehicles in perpetuity. This road will have a direct vision into the rear gardens of Rose Cottage and Marn House. Given that the garden of Marn House is the play area for my grandchildren, this proposal is a gross intrusion on the privacy of my family. The images are in the photo library. Using spatial separation standards and some planting, which may take 5 to 10 years to mature, is totally unacceptable. This issue has been completely ignored by the applicant and disappointingly not been properly addressed by ABC. During extreme weather events, the drain to the north of Rose Cottage is overwhelmed and the flood water builds up at the lowest point. And again, there are lots of photos in the photo library to show this, to evidence this. The original critical hydrological features drawing, which I've numbered there, showed an attenuation basin along the southern boundary, presumably to capture this surface water. This basin was shown through the roots of the protected oak tree 313. I continually raised this as an issue and ABC finally recognised this and added this into the reasons for refusal. In response to this refusal, the revised drawing was submitted showing the basin shortened to the west of the oak tree. Apart from satisfying the reason for refusal, this change does not make any engineering sense. Extracts of both drawings are appended in the photo library. A file of flooding history and many images and videos were supplied to KCC during the period of assessing this and previous planning application. I am appending a copy of the information supplied to KCC, and a number of flooding images are included in the photo library. There is an exceptionally high population of slowworms, lizards and newts in the immediate area north of Rose Cottage, and this will be destroyed by the proposed work. Again, see the photo library. Rose Cottage and Marn House are located at the end of a private drive. The properties to the south create an acoustic screen, which means virtually no road noise. The open countryside to the north means we live in a peaceful environment. The proposals create a noisy building site, potentially for 5 years. The main access road will continue to create noise in perpetuity. There is a field maple to the north of Rose Cottage, which was planted in as structural screening in 1996 by Hill Reed Homes, a previous potential developer. This tree was not recorded on the tree protection plan. This is a serious omission. This tree is on the footprint of one of the proposed dwellings and would become an early casualty without being appropriately recorded. see the photo in the library. There's a natural spring-fed pond in the garden of Rose Cottage, which is shown on the tithe map of 1843 and our own deeds of 1860. I have concern that this will be affected by groundworks near our property. I also have concerns that the proposed SUDS proposals and groundwork may lead to flooding of our property, and we should be indemnified against such eventualities. For all the above reasons, the buffer around Rose Cottage and Marn House should be increased to, one, respect the existing landscape, in particular trees, hedgerows and our pond, protect the heritage assets, reduce the potential for flooding, mitigate noise and airborne dust nuisance, and protect our privacy. Finally, at no time in the whole process and in their association with Limes Land have the applicants contacted us to understand our serious concerns over its impact on us and our property. In fact, the second application created a greater impact. I am hoping that this inquiry will enable me to give a voice to these concerns and that the inspector will be able to address them. Despite my numerous material objections to this application, the applicant appears to have been reluctant to engage with us. We fully understand the planning process and the potential outcome. However, an outline planning application is an ample opportunity to address these concerns, and I hope the inspector will be able to explore these issues. And I've said a photo library is appended to the document to provide a visual record of the issues raised with this statement. That's my main statement. Thank you. Hello.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just unmuting.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Poole.
Right.
So what I'll do is I'll let you give the other statement, and then you might be asked some questions, but
Okay.
certainly I can go on site when we do the site visit and have a look at some of these potential problems that you've raised, and certainly they're noted in your submissions. And there's also, as I highlighted earlier, some witnesses that you might even be able to ask questions of. But there's also going to be with these trees, there's going to be a round table discussion, which will probably follow this if we've got time to start it. And that will be an opportunity to maybe even raise some matters if you wish at that discussion. But I think hopefully those matters will be taken on board anyway in the discussion about the tree. So thank you very much on that. But if you'd like to now move over to your other role, which is representing Limes Land Protection Group, is that right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I'll just get
on the other issues that I may have and add those on at the end. Would that be okay? Just to...
Sorry,
there's a couple of issues, personal issues.
Oh yes. This is your opportunity to give all the.
Well, shall I give those now before I do the other statement?
Sorry, the other issues to do with your own property.
Well, it's personal issues from me as opposed to from.
Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't realise you hadn't added those in.
But, I mean, the first, it's questions of ownership. I noticed of the land, really. I noticed early on in the opening statement by Mr. White on behalf of the appellant, he talked about the Waits have control over the land. I presume this is via these agreements, promotion agreements that they have, but I think it was another item mentioned by Councillor Crawford with regard to the school land. It is subject to Department of Education approval for disposal of that land, and I'm aware that there have been no applications made to the Department of Education on the second application, and therefore this will have presumably a major impact on deliverability of the site. It's not something that comes very easily, and I suspect that might be a consideration. Another issue that has been glossed over in the application and not really dealt with, I think, I suppose it's because of my background in the energy industry, the way I've picked it up, is the electricity supplies for this site. And I don't know, whether that is a material consideration that should be considered, certainly in terms of deliverability. But with regard to the latest problems with energy supplies, I thought it was relevant to pick up on this point. The gas is probably a no-goer for the future, I would guess, in terms of gas boilers, which was on the original application that Waite submitted. They intended to put gas on the site, and I suspect that's changed now. One assumes it'll be air source heat pumps, things like that in the future, or electric heating of some sort. When the first considerations were put forward with regard to electrical supplies, it was dealt with by the Waite's consultant RSK, and they approached the UK Power Networks, and they suggested that a household requirement would be 2 kVA per dwelling. Now, if you translate that into kilowatts, it's probably 1.6 kilowatts per dwelling. Well, I might be wrong here, but I don't know any dwelling that will survive on a 1 kilowatt rating for its electrical supplies. But when you bear in mind, if it's air source heat pumps or electrical heating, on top of that, electric car vehicle charging, and in my view, this was a complete underestimate and hasn't been addressed properly. They were talking about using, if you go on the site, you'll see the overhead power lines which cross the site. They were talking about using those overhead power lines, which is a 6.6 kV supply, and then diverting it underground, and then taking sort of 2 or 3 substations from that to supply the dwellings on the site. All I'm trying to highlight is, I don't know if it's material or not, but it strikes me that in terms of deliverability of this site, that without electrical supplies, it's not going to happen in the short term, because that has to have a feasibility study on and new supplies from somewhere, I don't know. So it was just a thought that I would throw in. It's something, it's personal to me, because I just can't understand how it can be achieved really in the current circumstances, and you might want to look at that when you look onto the site. You will see
right. I think well, hopefully the appellant will try and address those concerns, but
okay.
I mean, if it's the case that is the overhead power lines would go underground, then that's a major thing to consider. But I didn't know that was what was being considered. So hopefully the appellant will address that.
Well, they certainly put it on there. They did some sort of what I call thumbnail sketches of where the power cable might go under the ground, which I, on a personal view, I thought was not very professional. I mean, I dealt with supplies for my daughter's property, and I know how long it takes to deal with individual companies to get drawings and designs and costs and things like that. And I think I probably spent more time doing mine for one property than it's been done on this site. And I think, well, I'll leave you to reflect on that. If you have a look, you may be able to inform yourself on that. Okay.
Well, maybe that's something the appellant can take on board,
okay.
and maybe even the council. I don't know whether the council has considered it either, but anyway. So thank you for that. So what I'll do is I'll well, I don't know whether it's appropriate now just to ask Mr. White. Have you got any questions on Mr. Poole's personal concerns?
I've just got one. It's not a question. It's just for a factual update, please. And I think it's actually a CD document. I just want to get this confirmation. As I understand it, your daughter's house was built in 2010. Is that correct?
Yeah, that sort of time. Yeah, whether it was 2009, 10.
Yeah, and you put in an application, or someone did, in 2008, 9. Is that right?
Yes, it will be. Yeah.
And what was previously there, as I understand, was the site was side garden and garage to your property.
Yes.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you.
Right. Okay. So what I'll do then, I'll move over to your next statement, which is the document, that's CD 742, is that right?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah. So I'll get on to that one. And this is for the Limes Land Protection Group.
Yes.
Right,
Just,
thank you.
Just for your background as well, before I read it, Limes Land Protection Group was formed in 2017, and it was following the first, if you like, signs of designs coming forward from Waits at that particular time. It's a number of residents who all lived local to the site or close, next to the site, and we felt that given the planning history and so on, well, obviously we needed to do something to argue against building on that site, and so that's how it came about. And
Right.
Since then, we've done a huge amount of work, and you'll see lots of submissions from Limes Land Protection Group, all material considerations, not just emotional stuff. It's material concerns about the site and so on. So hence where we are now. So I'm reading it on behalf of Limes Land Protection Group as a whole. So Limes Land Protection Group, LLPG, we're known as, invites the planning inspector to review our full comprehensive representations made for this appeal, and that is CD 736. Is the main document that we put forward. The appeal documents and supporting evidence produced by Waits Developments include a significant number of inaccuracies, inconsistencies, omissions, contradictions, and flaws, which we consider substantively affect the credibility of the appeal. The planning inspector is invited to accept assertions made and alleged facts relied upon by Waits Developments only if they are supported by truly independent evidence, i.e. not that of their chosen consultants. In our representations, we have sought to highlight and challenge a significant number of fundamental errors, including in respect of trees, ecology, drainage, flood risk, sustainability, deliverability, and climate change. Unequivocal substantial harm will occur if development takes place on the site, leading to catastrophic and irreplaceable loss of biodiversity. Ancient and veteran trees will be put at risk, conflicting with the NPPF and the Ashford local plan, because inadequate RPAs have been afforded to allow for more infrastructure, development and football pitches. LLPG consider that Waits Developments are deliberately ignoring the minimum RPA guidance as defined by British standards. It has been established that untold amounts of carbon will be released from the ancient grassland if development is permitted, thereby contributing to climate change. Waits Developments have glossed over this issue. Increased flood risk will result as the development will stretch an already overloaded drainage system. Historic landscape features will be destroyed, thereby denying future generations the opportunity to experience a truly special and ancient site on their doorstep. The residents of Tenterden, together with LLPG, question whether it is justifiable for planning permission to be granted when the proposal is not sustainable or deliverable and will lead to substantial harm. Currently, hundreds of dwellings are being built in Tenterden, with hundreds more allocated in the Ashford local plan. The Ashford local plan clearly states that the majority of development should take place in Ashford, as it is a sustainable location, yet this is also being ignored by Waits Development. That's it.
Right, thank you, Mr. Poole. I think that you've given a good summary of the case, and like I say, that there's a lot of these points are going to be covered in the inquiry anyway. So and by some of the witnesses. So I haven't really got any questions at the moment to ask, but whether Mr. White has, have you got any questions, Mr. White?
No, sir. We will deal with it at the appropriate time during the inquiry. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you very much, Mr. Paul.
Yeah, grateful.
And,
Thank you for your time as well. Thank you very much.
and like I say, that there will be a chance for those people who've actually given statements to ask some questions of those people who are relevant to their statements, i.e. the ones on accessibility, transport, drainage, and historic matters, really. So if you're around, you're welcome to put some questions to them. But like I say, I like to make sure that they're not repeating evidence or questions that other people have asked as well. So it might be worth, I don't know whether there's any way of getting together with other people who have got similar concerns and just getting questions prepared in advance for those witnesses. That might be helpful.
Okay.
And likewise with the other people who've come forward and given statements, i.e. Tenterden Town Council and the other organisations, the Residents Association and Councillor Crawford and other people. If it can be put together in a reasonable manner, then certainly it'd be worth looking at what questions you'd like to ask of those witnesses when they come up. But thank you very much, Mr. Paul.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So what I'd like to do next is there anyone else here who didn't mention their name when I was mentioned about people who wanted to say something at this inquiry? I'd like to repeat that I will be taking account of all the evidence that has been put before me from all the representations that I've seen. So when I make my decision, those will be taken into account as well. And so what I thought I'd do, I mean, at the moment it's nearly, I think we've got some time to open a round table session. But yeah, I've got a nod from,
Well,
Mr. White.
Well, as I understand it, for logistical reasons, well, I'll let Mr. Howell Williams deal with it, but I think that was a suggestion made, but I think there might be an issue with doing that.
Okay. So Mr. Howell Williams.
Yes, so there is an issue. Mr. Cook is not available.
Oh, right. Oh, well, that is an issue.
It's quite a big issue.
Yes.
We're very happy to start the round table, Mr. Cook, but no.
I mean, there's Mr. Coombs is available, but I don't think that would be a complete replacement for Mr. Cook, would it? So it's no, I'm only joking, but I think that in that case we won't. I mean, to be fair, it was scheduled for tomorrow, but it would be helpful if we can try and keep on a reasonable, make the best use really of the time. I know it was difficult to know how long third parties would take, but bearing in mind that this would be the next item on the agenda, it is worth having people in reserve if possible to actually use that time. But anyway, as it is, then there's not much we can do about that. So I'll have to leave it at that. And certainly there's no one else here who wishes to speak. So really, is there anything else that anyone would like to raise at this point before I adjourn until 9:30 tomorrow morning?
Can I just raise one point?
Yes.
Just to get your clarity on, sir. Mr. Maresfield has said that he needs to check with the rest of the steering group. Do you remember we asked him to put in his statement and to refer to the list of evidence which he relies on to support his statement, and he's just come back and said it would take 24 hours, which we've said we've been asked a question and by the programme officer, and we've said fine. If it's cut by close of play tomorrow, and just wanted your sanctioning that that's right. The only reason we said by close of play tomorrow is because obviously I want Mr. Goodwin to have a chance to look at that evidence before, and Miss Forster, before obviously that either of them give evidence, which might start on Friday. So if they have Thursday to do that, but I just wanted your agreement that you're okay if we say to Mr. Maresfield by tomorrow close of play.
Well, sorry, Mr. Maresfield's here anyway. Mr. Maresfield.
Yes, thank you. It is Maresfield. Yes, that's fine. I've already got a list of the relevant evidence, but I just need to submit it to the rest of the committee to make sure that they're happy with what I've said. So it's merely a formality, and you'll certainly have it soon. I only said 24 hours just to give them time to do so, but I can probably do it in less. Yeah, like I say, it would be helpful to have it sometime tomorrow then, if that Yes.
So that there is, like I say, is chance to for that to be looked at and taken on board. So that would be helpful.
Yes,
thank you, Mr. Mason.
I think I could probably give it to Caroline today, but because the committee is more than me, I just need to make sure they're all with.
Oh yes, you don't want to do anything outside that. Yeah.
No, I'm only one person of a committee, but yes, that's fine.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. White.
Thank you.
Right.
So what I'll do then, in that case, unless there's anything else, I'll now adjourn until 9:30 tomorrow.